Howdy. Another update on that little silly game I'm doing. I've mostly spent my time on things which are fairly pointless. This is how I approach things in life. So last time I had people spawning, running across, following a path. I've spent a little while since then putting some functionality into the items that I've put in so far. The items being the beacons and the walls. Well, the walls I think worked last time, but let's have a go. So the survivors now run to beacons and then leave a chain of beacons in the direction they're kind of pointing in. I've tried to get it so they'll do so in a sort of natural, humanish way, but I had to decide on some rules of how they would do that. So, how to deal with beacons? Well, let's have a little example. So there's our top-down thing. Let's get some people running off. I've added some terrible free sound effects, and you can see they're following these beacons, and so on. And these little folks down here, they do the same thing. You can see the AI sort of stuttering. I also reparented the AI controller to be a detour AI controller so that they navigate around each other when they meet. And that's a fairly textbook example of, there we go, even had a little finished in 32 seconds little message. They pretty much ran out the middle and followed the beacons. So what happens if you don't have the beacons, just by way of illustration? Oh, I moved the inventory bar up so you could see it this time. Oh, it's quite hard to control it when there's a few. Right. The beacons are deactivated. It's as if they don't exist. Let's just get them going all at once. Now the default behaviour for the AI is to follow a random path to a corner of the map in a way that I have defined. So the level designer can define where they might choose to run to, and you can see they split up and they got there eventually. And these guys similarly are going to different places, so these people are getting to the end a bit slowly. So through the use of beacons you can keep the team more or less coherent, running the same direction, and to a degree you can control where they go. If you wanted to stop them running there, you actually have to put a wall down, pretty much, because the way the beacon code works is, again, a lot of rules I've had to just decide arbitrarily how to make this work. If an AI sees a beacon, it will run towards it. If it sees another one before it's reached that one, if the beacon is further, it will then change course to run to the new beacon, and then if it sees another one, it will change course again. So an AI running this way will only stop at a beacon at this point, and at that point it decides where it should be going. And essentially, I've defined it that it will go to a random one of a destination that is reached by going this side of that line going through. So it'll choose any direction, any destination going in a forward direction in terms of how it reached the beacon. And let me just run that again to show you some of the debugging lines. So that's me running around. So that purple line, and there's that cyan line. Now, for some reason, some of them, yeah, he went a bit wrong. I think it's the AI code doesn't kick in time. So where there's a purple line, it means that the beacon was there. It's the last beacon to be visited. If it bypasses a beacon, it sets it as visited. It basically traces a line back to, well, it doesn't trace it in the UE sense. It works out where the nearest beacon is, checking that it has been visited, and then it determines a forward direction as being the continuation of that line through the beacon that's at the end. So the purple line, magenta line to be strict about it, was just going in that direction. So that defines what is a forward direction at the beacon. That is a somewhat arbitrary decision. That's how I've defined it. If and you saw in one case there was a cyan line. If a beacon is in isolation, it defines a forward direction as the direction the character was facing when it reached there. Now, because of the detour AI, it can jiggle around and face funny directions sometimes, which might be why that one balked. So I'll just run it again and turn off these beacons. And so there's no other information for it to work out other than where the character's facing, because there's no lines of beacons as they stand. So if I get these going, they will figure out where they're going. So straightforward for the first one. Second one, not so straightforward. So you see as they've turned around, forwards means different things, but it's still forwards. Now I haven't... Okay, so this is something that takes a bit of time to explain. These apple things are level encoded path nodes. So it says these are interesting points that the characters may wish to explore. There's a bit of logic, took me a little while, that if one of these is visible from the spawn, it's not included in the list of places that the AI may go. And basically it generates a list of places it wants to go, excluding ones that are visible when it spawns, in which case there's just two alternatives, which is why I saw them going one of two directions. And if it gets to a destination that has an exit visible from it, it will then proceed on to the exit. If there's no exit visible, it will remove that from the list and go to the next thing on the list, and it will pull off those destinations randomly. So I'm trying to get a bit of a slightly organic, randomized behavior. I'm also making it so that the AI go to an area rather than a single point, but it's still quite a small area because I don't want to break it, making them run into walls. And when it runs out of destinations, it rebuilds the list, excluding anything that it's currently seeing or at or on. I think actually excluding anything that it's near. So if it's gone to there and it's visited all other places, not seen an exit, it will then choose one of those two destinations. Those destinations will be added to the list and it will iterate through them. So for example, if there was a wall built there, none of the people would be able to get out. In fact, let's just test that. And also, once a beacon's been visited, it's dead, not considered again. You can pull it up and put it down, but let me just see how that goes. So that is bypassable, but it means that it's not visible from wherever that path node was. So let's just see what happens. My suspicion is they'll just run around randomly once they can't get to the end. So, yep, couldn't see the exit. It's trying somewhere else. Sorry about all that text there. So it's a right old muddle. And it's trying that destination. Some of them are trying that destination. It's just randomized. So they're going to keep running around, going to all the destinations until something changes. So in terms of level design, this will be ideally some kind of default scenario where everything's completely wrong. And your goal as the player is to impose order, and that's the detour AI getting a bit confused. And eventually this will shake out and they'll run out of destinations and get to that one and then exit. So I'm quite happy with that so far, and that the beacons, they're kind of intuitive, I think, to use. If you just have the one beacon near an exit, it usually kind of works. So here is the here is the nav mesh. Where is the nav mesh? Why am I getting no nav mesh? Nav mesh, there we go. Now, the first iteration of these beacons would be sort of, okay, that's the direction you come in. Look at any destinations which are in a forward direction. So, yes, it would work for that. But I was finding that if the beacon was up there, that would tell a human player to go around there, but that destination is not in a forwards direction relative to there. So I had to find out where the path went, and this can be described as nothing less than a massive hack. I'm trying to bring this blueprint across. So what did I do? Okay, and for performance reasons, I don't want to be tracing paths to destinations all the time, anytime you hit a beacon. So what I did was, when you place a beacon, it generates data telling it where each of the destinations is relative to that beacon. So this is a nice bit of optimization. Furthermore, it does one destination per tick, just to spread out the load. So it's doing one trace per tick maximum when you place down a beacon, and after that it uses the cached information. And what it stores is, and I need to find a beacon. Let's just go to that blueprint, move it across. There's a bit of admin, but basically, yeah, it's so on the tick. One bit of the tick handles the flashing, fair enough, and this does a trace for one destination. So if it's still doing it, get the destination of, so get the beacon's position and get the position of the relevant destination at the current index. So that says find the path from here to the destination. I don't know if this is necessary or works, but this is a dummy Survivor AI controller, which basically tells it to use the rules that apply to the Survivor AI. So the player's character might have different rules, like you can use a jetpack, or maybe you're flying, whereas this tells it to proceed on the basis of being a normal survivor. There may be some wrinkles to iron out there. And this find path to location synchronously. This gives you a navigation path object reference. It's not a thing I've ever dealt with, but if you pull that off, you can get excuse my language, if you drag that off, you can get a few things, including path cost, path length. They might be interesting things to do, but they are potentially high costs. But the alright, other stuff that might be interesting. Alright, yeah, I haven't really figured out asynchronous. That might be what I want, really. But get path points literally gets you a sequence of vectors, which is the path that it thinks is good to go through. There's a debug command that will show you that graphically. I can't remember what it is offhand. Oh yeah. So there's some interesting AI debuggy stuff. So let's just run it again. And I think it's the apostrophe key gives you, and you have to redo it when you launch something. So go. There we go. That's showing you where your AI is going, the path it's choosing. So it's not at this stage showing you. Hang on, use the number pad to show the path mesh. Yeah, that's not what I want. And perception's quite interesting. So I've given them sight because I'm God. And this shows what's in their sight, and it's potentially interesting stuff. I need to slow down all these people coming up. Yeah, so you can see the paths, the sort of path planning. And so that's what the path nodes will be on, which means that if your ultimate destination is down there and your beacon's there, it will give you a sensible result. It will show you that you're moving in that direction, not that direction. So it's looking at the immediate vicinity, and I basically hacked it because it seems that the first path point is a change of height to get to the appropriate height of the pawn, and the second path point is the nearest planar movement. So I'm just looking at the first path point, which might be close, might be far, and using that to get, so test if it's big enough, and then get the first array, discount the height. I only want it to be in 2D, and that one to only be 2D. Then it generates the direction vector, so it's a unit vector pointing in the appropriate direction with no Z component, and it adds it to the initial path list. So you can then query the beacon and say, right, for this destination, let's find it. For this destination, being a destination path node, tell me what its direction is in terms of the path, not in terms of actual, the geometry of it. So it just finds the relevant entry, gets the index, and pulls off, pulls off the appropriate entry of the path vector list. So it's not doing too much in terms of nav mesh stuff, but actually it's pretty neat and it works quite well. So let's just do another thing. Just going to turn all these off. So I may refine the system slightly. I mean, they are a solution without much of a problem so far, these beacons. There are some interesting effects. You've got to plan it appropriately. If you stick these down, this will... I'd better slightly move that there. This should send these people in this direction. I mean, it won't actually change what they're doing because they'll go that way or that way. So that's a silly example. So let's see which way they go. They should all split left and right because both ways, you see the direction there. That path node is in a forward direction, and so is that one because the immediate path is that way. So that is behaving as required. But you've got to plan it carefully because if you've got another spawn, they're going to get sent entirely the wrong way. And that's not desired. And after that, they split two ways because, you know, there's no guidance to them. The beacon is now not considered for them. But eventually they get to the exit. So in terms of problem design, you could have some hostile AI that spawns whenever a person spawns, which means, and if they're travelling slightly slower than the person will escape so long as they don't make any wrong turns. So that is a possible problem design. You could potentially have people being taken around obstacles. There could be some invisible things that kill players. You could also deal with that with walls, I guess. Bombs I was thinking of putting in either as proximity bombs to kill hostile AI or to blow bits of the scenery up. I need to do a bit of work, I think, soon on the problem design. But the beacons essentially work, so that's nice. There we go. That's basically what I'm going to show you now. I'll show you when I've got a more interesting level design. Oh, I forgot to say, there were some other aspects of this which needed doing. One aspect was to update the behaviour tree, which now is a little bit different. I think this is probably a shit behaviour tree and needs a bit more work, but here's how it is. I've got a few more variables. That one I don't think I need, but I'm going to leave it for now in case I break it. So exit location is where the survivors leave, targets where they're currently heading to, excursion location I may not have mentioned before, and beacon location. So these are sort of sub-intermediate locations which, if they're set, will take precedence over the general target. And so in terms of execution, first of all, if it's at the exit, leave. Then if it's at a target location, get a new location. Ah, no, I've changed it, just clears it. And then further to the right, it will set a target if it's clear. But in the middle, if there's a beacon location, then try... Okay, and then if it's at the beacon location, there's a bit of code which will find the next one or find a destination, and that's a fairly horrible bit of code. But if it's not at the location, just move to the beacon location. And so that'll clear itself once the player gets to the beacon location. The current beacon is set by the AI perception. This is a thing I've added. I don't really fully understand it, but it's a component, and you set up... Sorry, I'll stop the simulation. I've added sight. It only actually detects neutrals because you have to set up teams, and that's apparently not a blueprint thing. A few things that can be tweaked. Does it forget where the thing is? Not relevant in this case. How big the vision cone is, that's still fairly big. And what radius it is, so that's perhaps a little big given what I was seeing before. And that's one thing, and then there is a event which is called not that one. Egad, horrible code. So on perception updated, you just get a list of stuff that's been seen. So first of all, is it a beacon? I'm going to have to expand this and generalize when I've added more things for them to see, like hostile AI. But yeah, if it's a beacon, cast it to a beacon. Is it the current beacon? Oh, I can't remember why, I need to check that. Okay, assuming you've seen a different beacon, there's a bit of code that figures if it's going to attract the player, and you can check the visibility as part of that which will do a line trace to see if it's visible. And that just checks, you know, is it activated? Is it not placing currently? That kind of stuff, just your basic housekeeping. If you're already moving to a beacon, check if it's nearer or not, and then if it's nearer, just carry on to the one you're going to. But if the one you can see is further, reset the beacon to be the new one. But for that to work, you also need to go to the thing you want to see, which is your beacon, and you have to add another component, which is the perception stimuli source, and say it's seen. It could be seeable, and that just about gets it working. It seems to be updated not super quick. There's probably a setting somewhere, but sometimes the AI doesn't spot things in time and has weird, slightly undefined behaviour. But we're back to the behaviour tree. So that's the beacon stuff. It sets the target location if it's not been set by that point, and if it still can't. Wait a minute. If it is set, so if that was successful. Well, if that's successful, everything stops. But the next time round, I think I'm doing this wrong probably, but it kind of gets there. Then move to the path if it exists. I should probably put that in the other one. And if it's equal to the target, so if the target location is the exit location, oh crap, I don't know. I get confused by this. And there's a little bit here, which is if it's doing nothing, it will move around a bit. So this excursion just sends it to a random point. Get random reachable point and radius. This is pulled off some demo example thing. Basically, if it's doing nothing, okay, get where you are, get something within that radius of where you are, which will be reachable on the nav mesh and not in a mesh, not blocked in something, and set that as the okay, that's a thing that's passed back to the blackboard, which is set to be the excursion doodah. And if you really can't do anything at all, just wait. So that's fairly solid. So if I can't remember if I've shown you this already. So with that behavior tree, if you just block people in, that's what they do if they can't reach anywhere.
Go, 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 go.
So they are now doing little mini excursions. And if I was to remove the blockage, they'll start to figure out they can go. And off they go. And for some reason they're all going there. That may be just chance, or I've broken something else. There we go. There we go.